Maya, this is the pre-show discussion. Before we go on, we got to really find something really exciting to open up with. But say your name real fast so I can hear.
Maya Goode.
Maya Goode, which is an easy name, but for me, I have to have it said. And what we want to do is we want to come on really strong with the opening. So we've got to come up with something that's really strong. And then we'll talk about you in the second part of the show.
Okay. So,
Maya, welcome to Timelines.
Thank you very much for having me.
Hey, to start right off with, we're going to jump right to one of your life and success principles, and that's sacrifice for your passion. Now, you are an author's assistant.
Correct.
How do those fit?
It fits because my passion is writing, and I have every intention of being a professional author. And so in order to do that, I've reoriented my life so that everything in my life is focused on promoting that one goal. And rather than having another day job where possibly I make more money, I work as a freelance author assistant so I can learn the skills needed to market, to do interviews like these, to promote authors so that when I am my own author, when I have my own books published, I'm able to do that.
Very good. You know, when you talk about writing, there's all sorts of different types of writing, and there's some writings that are dying. For example, newspapers. If you're a journalist right now in a newspaper, that's a tough thing to continue on because you're going to have to change, you're going to have to repurpose or do other things. My great grandfather worked for the LA Times, and I was an intern for the LA Times in high school.
Yeah.
And my friends who went to work for newspapers, which I was on that track, you know, they have had a rough life the last 5-10 years because of the internet and a new environment, and sort of been the anticlimactic end to their careers. And they're really not ready to retire, but the money's just not there for those newspapers in those areas. So writing, what's the future for making a living?
Well, I'm a literary writer. And so that's the big problem because literary fiction traditionally has been traditionally published. And we don't have a Hugh Howey in literary fiction. We don't have a big indie author who's making a lot of money as a self-published author in literary fiction yet. And so one of the things that's happening is that traditional publishers are promoting new authors less. They're doing less marketing. They're even doing less editing, but they haven't raised the income of the literary writers per book. And so for genre writers, they've been able to self-publish and have a decent income as a self-published author, and kind of have that mid-range writer be able to make a living. But for literary fiction, that hasn't been the case. And so my goal and the reason why I am an author assistant is I'm spying on the indie authors that are making a living. And I'm thinking about how to use what they're doing for literary fiction, regardless of whether I'm self-published or traditionally published.
Now, you have a podcast and you have some what I call new media. How's that working out?
It's great. I love our podcast. We started the podcast with two goals. The first goal was that I needed to read more in order to be able to revise my novel. I had a novel that I was writing and it had problems. And I knew that if I had accountability, I would read more. But the second and more important goal for the podcast was to build a platform so that when I am published and I go to a traditional publisher and they ask me what my platform is, I have one. Or if I decide to indie publish, I have a name and I have people that know my name, which will make it easier for me to market. And so we have 3 shows. One, Literary Roadhouse, one short story once a week. Me and 3 other co-hosts from all over the world. We read a short story and we discuss it every week. And we pull from really diverse fiction from all over the world, different nationalities, different styles of literary writing. And then we have a monthly book club, which is the same thing. That is one of our newer shows where we discuss a book every month. And then we have a writing podcast where we write a short story every week. And we just talk about what that challenge is like to live through.
Okay, very good. Now, I know you've created your own website. It's a good-looking website. What's the name of that website?
LiteraryRoadhouse.com.
And you've done that mostly all yourself, correct?
I did it all myself.
Yeah. You know, to do what you've done, maybe at $10,000, you would get some other tie-ins or more responsive type sites. Not when I say responsive, email collection processes and high-tech stuff. But people spend $10,000 for a good website now.
Yeah, they do. And I did it all myself. And every 3 months, I go back through my website and I look at it and I say, what can I improve this month? what can I improve this quarter? And so every single, quarter, you'll see the website's getting better. It's getting tighter. The email collection's getting better. The players load faster. And really my goal is to have that site as smooth as possible so that when I am a published author and when we start our literary journal, that the website is not the problem.
That is so smart. I can't tell you how important the website is. And I'm self-taught in WordPress. And I also do a show with a developer in WordPress. And I've met all the top WordPress developers in the West and interviewed some of the top in the world. And it's exactly what you said. You have to understand the basics and get it down. Maybe someday you would contract out parts of your work, but at least you control it and understand it. So that's a good platform. You're building a solid platform. I can think of another way you can make money right now. With the skill set that you're learning right now, and literally helping other authors out, is to create some type of online course, like through LMS.
Yeah, a lot of people do that. And actually, one of the authors that I work with, that's one of the things that she does. It's not something I've dove into just because I'm actually, and this comes right back to sacrificing for my passion. I limit the amount of work that I allow myself to do every day so that I have more time to get my writing where I want it to be. And that means that I see opportunities to make money and I say to myself, will making that money make my book better? And then I think, no, and I back away.
No, that's good. That's good because you've got it. You've got your priorities. It's like you've got your focus, and that's really important. Mine's not quite as philanthropical as yours. My goal is to try to get this show edited by 7:00 tonight. Because I love to interview folks and it's fun and you learn and you get better and it's a process.
But that editing takes a long time. We run into that too. Me and my podcast wife, we do all the editing for all 3 shows. And one of our goals is to launch a Patreon and be able to fund hiring an audio editor.
It's hard to give up editing. Some of the most famous producers they may not love to edit, but they know they have to edit. They have to get in there because you learn when you edit. You listen, you learn. One of my problems is I'll get back into my show and I'll look up stuff that we talk about. It's like amazing stuff.
That's one of the reasons why we both edit is so that we both can hear every show and we can look at what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong, and we can talk to the other hosts and be like, okay, this thing that you're doing isn't working for the show, or maybe we need to change things around. And if only one of us is editing, we don't necessarily see that.
So what kind of equipment are you using to create your podcast?
That is a big question because like I said, we have a total of 4 hosts. So one of our hosts is in Costa Rica. One of our hosts is in the UK. And then right now I'm in California, but I'm going to be in South America soon. And our 4th host is in California right now. But when we started, he was in the Middle East. So we are all in different locations with different audio, different internet. So what we do is we record our shows using either Blab or Google Hangouts, but we do not use the audio from Blab and Google Hangouts. We each record our tracks individually. So I record my track with either an ATR 2005, not the 2100, but the black one.
I've got the little one, the RL5.
Yeah, I either record
RL5,
it with that or I record it with a lav mic, and both of those are attached to an external recorder. I use a Tascam. I use the Tascam DR100 MK2. Now, my other co-host, Gerald, he has a big fancy microphone and a big fancy mixer, and he uses that to record on Audacity. And Anais has a boom mic because her fiance is in video. And so she borrowed a boom mic from him and she records on Audacity. And then poor Rami, we're about ready to upgrade his mic for him. He is on a Logitech headphone, again, recording on Audacity.
I think I listened to him today. I listened to the show earlier and I think he had a little static coming in.
Every once in a while, his audio just goes, but gradually we're getting everyone new mics. We just upgraded Chrissy to a 2100 and She was first because she was having major audio problems. So pretty much when we upgrade, we look at whoever is in the worst condition and we deal with them first.
Now, for $50, any author should be going on podcasts, learning to do what we're doing to communicate, and they should just buy an ATR 2100.
It's a really expensive mic, but honestly, I've looked for a more expensive mic that will do what that cheap little mic will do, and I can't find one. There is so much utility in being able to connect your mic both to your computer and to an external recorder, and that's what we do. So my mic is going into my computer, so I sound good to you, but then if I'm recording the show, it's also going into my external recorder, and that way it's going to sound even better for the podcast.
Right, the ATR 2100 is really all you need. You don't need the mic I have, the RL50. I mean, the Heil PR40. But this one sometimes sounds better, and it's just you're done. The more things you connect it to, if you mixers, things like that, if you can learn to mix on your screen, whether it's a Mac or a PC, which you can do pretty easy, you can move the sound around and get adjusted. And if you have good people you're working with, they listen to each other. The sound comes out fine.
And one thing that people don't talk about is a lot of those really popular podcast mics like what you have, they sound great for male voices. They do not necessarily sound the best for female voices. And I've found in listening to shows that the ATR 2100, the ATR 2005, a lot of the dynamic mics that like pick up voice, like more range of voice, sound better for female voices than a lot of these super cool mics with really good bass sound that makes your voice sound all awesome and radio-y.
Right.
And not necessarily work for female voices.
Yeah, I like the 2005. So we've got a little tech side, and that's just because you're writers and background. And I'm actually interviewing I'm interviewing quite a few writers, and they really need to know this. All they need to know is this ATR 2100. Plug it in the laptop. Play with somebody. Get somebody like you to help them out to get the sound right.
You know, being an author right now has changed so much. You can no longer just write in your office and say goodbye to the world, regardless of whether you're independently published or traditionally published. You can't do it because if you are traditionally published, unless you're Stephen King, you're not getting marketing. You need to be able to talk and have a decent mic. Even if you don't have your own podcast, you need to be able to have a decent mic so you can go on other people's podcasts for interviews.
Right.
You need to feel comfortable editing videos. So maybe you can get on YouTube. You need to be comfortable on Twitter and Facebook. All those things. You need to have an idea about marketing. You need to have a way to collect emails because Amazon's not going to tell you who your readers are. And your publisher isn't going to know who your readers are. Your publisher is marketing to stores. So these are all things that you need regardless of how you're publishing.
With that, we're going to go to a break and we'll come back to your life and success principles, and maybe we'll follow up on this just a bit. Okay, coming back off the break, we're just having too much fun talking about podcast equipment because we're both podcast geeks.
Yeah, that happens.
So I'm going to ask you before we go into your life and success principles, since we talked about those a bit, what are your two favorite books? One business and other.
Well, business would be influenced by Robert Cialdini, and it is an amazing book. I actually read that in college for a psychology class, and it proceeded to change my life for the rest of my life because I used it in every job I've ever had in my entire life. I use it on YouTube. It just teaches you, if you look at it in a bad way, it teaches you how to get people to do what you want. But actually what it is it teaches you what makes people like you and what makes people want to do things for you. And yeah, it's a very important book. Psych 101, best book I ever read for psych.
You know, we have a political show, which we're removing from this RSS feed. It does really well. But with that, I'd like to ask you, how does Donald Trump influence people?
I don't know.
Maybe I shouldn't go there.
Don't go there.
It is the strangest. I can't quite figure it out.
We don't need to go there today. My favorite fiction book right now is Inheritance by Samantha Lan Chang. And she is an amazing writer. She is the director of the Iowa Writers Workshop, and she was my workshop leader for the Napa Writers Conference last year. And she taught me so much about writing. It's ridiculous. But this book we read it for the podcast for the Literary Roadhouse Book Club. And it was the first book we read where everybody was in love with the book. It's so tight. It doesn't have extraneous words. It's not bloated. There's nothing missing. And it is delicately written in a way that I strive for in my own writing.
What you said there, it came to mind is you actually review the books with 3 other people, and that's one of the books you reviewed. And even if you don't get large downloads or a lot of folks, and you get some people that you get loyal followers, but it forces you to actually get better and to understand.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why we do it, is because it forces you to think about reading in a different way. So when we started the show, when we started the first podcast, one of the things we talked about was the fact that a lot of really diverse fiction isn't getting out there. But the other thing we talked about was how many people have a negative view of fiction because of how they were taught in elementary school, high school, and college. And so when we structured the show, the structure was so that we want to promote literary fiction as it's fun and it's interesting. So we don't come on and say this book is good or this book is bad. We actually hold a workshop style discussion, and it can get kind of rowdy, and we have a lot of fun with the books, and it forces you to have a relationship with the books. It forces you to look at what the author is doing or not doing and why you like it, rather than just saying that you like it. And it definitely has changed the way I write. Starting Literary Roadhouse was the best thing that I've done for my writing to date.
Very good. So before we go into success and life principles, I do have a couple more writing questions. Are there any tools that the blogger can use to improve their writing, other than like Shrunken Elements of Style by Shrunk?
Two things that I would recommend, actually. The first one is dictation. One of the authors I work with wrote a book called Dictate Your Book. And what I found was when I use dictation, I lose a lot of my writerly tone. And my writing is much more personable, which works really well for blogging. So if you're a blogger and you find that sometimes you sound too formal or you sound too stilted or you're not engaging your audience, I recommend trying out dictation. You might find that your tone changes in a way that works really well with blogging. The other thing I would recommend is Scrivener. Everybody recommends it for everybody. A lot of people don't talk about it for bloggers. I think it's great for bloggers because you can have a different file for every blog post. You can have a different folder for every month. And that way you can future plan all your blog posts in a way that's easier than just having a bunch of Word files around.
Yeah, I'm working with the learning management systems, and I wonder if some of the same tools would help out with learning management too, to put your thoughts down and put them together.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Scrivener is great for stuff like that, for brainstorming, for gathering information, and then trying to create something coherent out of a mess.
Very good. We'll have all these in show notes. We'll have all your tools written down. So it'll take me longer to edit and write. It's fun though. I mean, I like to look at them. I haven't bought Scrivener yet. What does it cost a year?
I think regular price, it's like $40.
That's cheap.
And usually I've always gotten it half off. And crazy thing is,
wow,
whenever I get a new computer, it is the very first software I load. I've had it for Windows. I've had it for Mac. I even had the beta Ubuntu version once upon a time. I do not have a computer that does not have Scrivener on it.
Yeah, I've heard it's the way to write. That's for sure. So going on, we'll finish up this part with your success and life principles. We already talked about sacrifice for your passion, and your passion is writing. And then you like to be around writers, which is kind of nice. It's not about the money. It's about the quality of life.
It isn't. And eventually I will make a living off my writing. I have no doubt about that. And part of the reason why I feel so confident is because I am willing to sacrifice for my writing. So another example is I'm leaving the US. One of the biggest reasons I'm leaving the US is because it's expensive to live here. And I can live someplace cheaper and spend more time getting my book ready to publish than I could if I were to stay here. So, literally I'm picking up and leaving and getting rid of almost everything I own so that I can focus on my writing. And now you don't have to be as dramatic as that. But the point is, if you really have a passion for something, sacrificing for it doesn't feel like sacrifice. But if it feels like sacrifice, and that's kind of a hint that maybe that's not really where your passion is.
Right. I think it's a great plan. For the first time, I even thought about some other countries I could go to because I have a military retirement. But it's an interesting thing. It's not quite enough to stand by itself here. And a lot of things I do.
You could live like a king.
Yeah, that's true. So you can, as long as you have a good internet and your laptop.
That's right there.
And some countries have very good internet now.
Mm-hmm.
So your two is be fearless in the face of fear. That was one.
Yes. That is something I learned very young. I learned it out of necessity, and looking back, it is the one thing I'm very glad to have. So what I've found in my life is all of my biggest advances, all of the biggest growth spurts, everything has been preceded by fear and pain. So if I'm afraid of something, I don't avoid fear. I jump into it. So people say, "Oh, aren't you afraid of going to South America?" Of course I'm afraid. That's why I know it's the right choice for me. I know that I'm pushing my limits. It's like marketing. If everybody loves you, then you're doing something wrong. Well, it's kind of that kind of thought process where if everything is comfortable, then I'm not pushing hard enough. And I need to push to my edges to see what I'm capable of. And so if you're starting a business and you're afraid, it's not about trying to make that fear go away. It's about saying, okay, I'm afraid and doing it anyway.
Now, your last one that we have is be honest, but I want to tie that in with the recommendation you had of influence, because I've thought about that often in the sales business. People oversell things.
Yes.
And a lot of it's a judgment or it's a value that the other person perceives. But there's got to be a balance there, especially on the online. In fact, Mike is on here with us, and we do a show on Fridays, which is kind of fun. It's called the Weekly Scam. But we talk about most of that is overselling or over promising and under delivering. So how do you balance that?
I don't actually consider it a balance because if you're honest, your customers know, and that makes them loyal to you. So my clients, they know that if I say that I can do something, that I'm capable of doing it. They know if I say something's a bad idea, that it's probably a bad idea. When I used to sell cars, I've sold mortgages. I've sold so much stuff.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. I was in sales for a very long time, hence influence. I had clients that I would tell them, I can't do your loan. I would love to, can't do it. Here's a source where you can fix your credit. Here's another source where you might be able to get a loan, but I can't do your loan. And they would come back to me over and over and over, please, please, please. They would send their mother, father, grandparents, neighbors, everybody to me because I was so honest, because I was able to say, I can't do this for a reasonable amount. You need to go elsewhere. And so for me, honesty isn't in conflict. Honesty is how I lead my life.
Got to ask a question. What type of cars did you sell?
I started out selling GM, Saab, like all the American, Ford, yada, yada. Eventually, I sold Audi, BMW. I sold, I sold so many just amazing cars, just amazing, fast, beautiful, shiny cars.
BMWs. Well, we've had a couple. We've had 3 BMWs, 5 series. The
first time I got to drive a Ferrari around because
wow.
I was thinking we were talking about taking it and trade. Everyone's like, so who's going to drive it to make sure it drives good? I'm like,
my wife's next real estate car is going to be
what?
A Tesla.
Oh, nice. I would love to get in the front seat of a Tesla.
Oh, I've been in them.
The only thing I miss about car sales is being able to drive everybody's car.
Yeah.
Even if you don't sell that car, you get to drive it because they all come into life. And we sold Porsches,
I like Porsches too. I like cars, but I just don't want to pay for them. It takes so much work and so much effort. We have a Honda Pilot right now. We live in Reno up in the mountains. We need the 4-wheel drive. But the Tesla, I think will be a good real estate car, to tell the truth, because of
it will be. It has a stamp to it. When you see one, it looks classy, but it looks successful. But at the same time, it has that kind of I care about the world kind of vibe. And so as far as marketing, I think it has a good message when you drive one around. And
very efficient, very low maintenance, and you plug it in your house, and the cost is not that excessive to charge it, and it's comparable to or less than buying fuel for a Pilot for sure.
Ways. Works for just, how you're seen by clients, but totally save money on driving.
Well, we've really wandered into here talking about cars. And the other thing too, I was going to say is in a real estate company, which we have real estate companies, our very, very best agents have started in car sales or bartenders.
I was a bartender too.
You've got all the cards, so you'll do really well at your next venture or this venture. That's good.
Yeah, it's not a next venture. It's a this venture.
This
I
continuing.
will be a published author. I will be a hybrid published author, both traditional and indie, and I will be successful. It's just the way it is.
Okay. We're going to go to a break and we're going to come back for your final conversation about your contacts and how we can contact you. And one last question.
Okay.
May, a couple final thoughts. First of all, how can the listener contact you?
The best way to contact me is to contact me through my websites. LiteraryRoadhouse.com is where the podcast lives. And there you can check out all 3 of our shows. And that's also going to be the home of a future literary journal. If you want to look at my writing and my poetry, you can go to mayagoode.com. And that's good with an E at the end.
So this is sort of a follow-on onto how you can be contacted. But what can the listener do specifically to help you? For example, they can go up on your podcast and they can rate it on iTunes. That's one thing.
Exactly. That is the biggest thing, especially for our new shows. And the thing is, we want to build a strong community of people that like literary fiction. And so don't just, listen to an episode, but if you like the show, go ahead and review it and tell your friends about it and let the world know that literary fiction isn't boring and it's not, annoying. It's wonderful. It's fun. It's a fiction that lasts decades and, sparks revolutions. Literary fiction is important to all of us.
Thank you for explaining what literary fiction is. I was going to ask that question. So we're going to have to ask another question. That's actually one of my backup questions. And you just did it. So going on, is there any other things you want the listener to do for you right now?
For me, no. But what I would like them to do for themselves is to stretch. Look at what they normally read and then try to read something totally different. The best thing that I found both for my writing and my life that I've gotten from Literary Roadhouse has been the fact that we don't choose our fiction by reading it and deciding it's good. We choose randomly. I've read authors from Korea, from South America, from Russia, from Japan. I've read authors that I never thought I would read. I've read stories that on their face I thought, oh, I'm not going to like that story, and I've loved them. And then I've read stories that I hated that I learned a ton from. So look at what you normally read and then try to read something completely different.
Okay. The one last question is, when you write a book and writing one of your books, what is the toughest thing to do to write a book?
The toughest thing is revision, because everyone talks about finishing that rough draft. I think that's the toughest thing for people that aren't sure they can finish. But once you finish that rough draft, you're faced with the difference between your sense of taste and what's actually on the page. And revision is where everything is polished. So you've spent maybe a month, maybe 2-3 years, sketching out this amazing story that by the end looks a little bit like a giant blob of granite. And now you have to get out the chisels and make it into Michelangelo's David.
Very good. With that, we'll finish up and we're going to go on for a few minutes on YouTube and Blab. Let the audience come in and ask questions and talk to you directly. On. What should we put for a title? Write a book on Blab?
I wouldn't do that. I don't think we talked that much about writing. I would say,
no, I'm just saying
we did talk about writing.
Let's see. Write a book on Blab. Can I write a book? Can I write a book on Blab? Can I write? It's unlocked too, right?
I actually think Sacrifice for Your Passion is a really great title. It seems like we talked a lot about that.
You know what I'm trying to do? Is I'm trying to figure out.
All over the place.
Yeah, we were. It'll be interesting. I'm going to have to edit this thing. God.
You're going to have fun editing. I was thinking, I was like, oh, he's not going to like editing this.
I stayed up late. I watched what I did last night. My wife was actually watching like a biography of Churchill. And I love to watch biographies, but I like to spend time with the family. And I said, she shut it down. And I watched part of it with the family instead of going and editing and getting my work done. And then I stayed up late.
I hardly ever watch TV anymore. It's one of the things I gave up for writing was TV.
Yeah.
The only TV that I allow myself to watch is Spanish TV because I'm trying to learn Spanish since I'm in South America. So the only TV that I've watched 2 Netflix movies in the last 2 weeks. That's a lot for me.
Are you going to Brazil? You told me.
I plan on going everywhere. I have no
Brazil
idea
is
where I'm going to end up.
Portuguese.
Yeah, Brazil is Portuguese. I actually plan on going to all the Spanish-speaking places first. And once my Spanish is up to a certain level, then I'm going to start learning Portuguese.
Oh, yep. Here's a question that you might be able to answer. For writing, what can Blab do for writers?
Blab is a really easy way to get engagement. So I've been on Blab and used it as a utility. I haven't used it for social development. It makes my podcasting life much easier, and my podcast gives me a lot of benefits for my writing. It helps my skills, but also it's helping me build an audience and build that, quote unquote platform. But it also has an opportunity, if you have a large audience, you can really be engaged with them. So some of the guys that I work for, they have several podcasts, and they recently moved them to Blab, and it allows their listeners came with them. And so their listeners are able to ask them questions for Q&As and stuff about their writing. And they used to do that on YouTube, but that functionality has kind of been removed. And so Blab allows for that.
Very good. That made a lot of sense. How can Blab expand their audience? I think I saw they had something on today. They were doing a workshop on a whiteboard, which I love to see whiteboards, especially in tech places. Mm-hmm. So how can Blab expand their audience? I think there's they need to get more serious in some aspects.
Yeah. And honestly, I think that, I don't look at Blab the way a lot of people look at Blab. A lot of people come on Blab and they think they're going to build their audience on Blab. I don't think that way. I think that my audience is larger and I have these different portals to them. And so rather than coming to Blab and expecting to build a new audience, I come to Blab and I use it for its utility in order to sustain or engage the audience I already have on my website, on my YouTube, on my Twitter, yada, yada. I don't come here for new audience. Now, I know there are people that are able to do that, but it just hasn't been my focus or my goal. So I haven't even really researched that.
When I do the interview like we just did, I don't worry about people coming on. In fact, if I wanted people to come on, I would send an email out.
Exactly.
If I want people to come in, what we do Saturday mornings, we have pretty good engagement. We go over our WordPress and then we review 2 or 3 WordPress sites. And if anybody wants to come up, we'll review their sites. And some of these are very, very top people who are on the show.
Exactly. And most importantly, I don't think for authors, we already have the problem where traditional publishers don't know who your audience is because they're only selling to bookstores. And Amazon doesn't tell you who your audience is because they don't give you emails. So you go to YouTube and you have that audience, but then if something happens, you can lose that audience. Mm-hmm. And you go to Twitter, and what if your account gets dead? So I think all of these things should always point back to your website, your email mm-hmm. list. I don't necessarily believe in having a quote unquote Blab audience. I believe in using Blab to bring your audience to your website.
Yeah, like I said, just the email is so tough. As learning how to discipline yourself and cleaning your email list, getting mm-hmm. really good quality people on your email.
Yeah.
You were in lending and you were around realtors, and I'm going back. We do this real estate show telling people, you got to build your personal list, your personal farm. It doesn't have to be huge.
That's the only thing you can take with you. That is it. And even before we had that, I remember my sister leaving a company, and she had a big box full of her list, essentially. Mm-hmm. If you have a list of emails, you can go anywhere and do anything.
Right. And then make sure they're good. And a list of people, real estate, you can still have a farm and the addresses and phone number. And you build phone numbers. Actually, mm-hmm. you can use Google Gmail contacts if you learn how to use those well, if you don't want to use a contact management system. What system do you use?
For my website?
Yeah, for Aweber.
I actually use MailChimp. I used to use Aweber, but I didn't have the volume to sustain that. And I found that the infrastructure, I've been on the internet too long to deal with a messy GUI, and it just irritated me. And so I would put off putting out my newsletter. And since I've gone back to MailChimp, my newsletter is very consistent. It's every month. And, people like that,
I use a MailChimp for the nonprofits that I help maintain their websites.
Yeah, it's perfectly decent until you have a ton of people. I don't have a ton of people.
2,000.
My lists are very small and very loyal, and that's fine. it's taken me years to build up my YouTube channel. That's the kind of growth I want, because those people will follow me anywhere I go, no matter what I do.
What is your YouTube channel? It wasn't on my form
It's
here.
Quotidian Light.
Can you
One
put it in?
second.
Yeah, we'll stick it in there. That's interesting. I have made every mistake on YouTube. I have like 15 Gmail accounts.
I have several YouTube channels.
Yeah,
it's a pain in the butt.
You're not supposed to, because what it does, it messes you up instead of
and unfortunately, I had to for branding. We've got a YouTube channel for Literary Roadhouse, which is just us, our episodes, and then I have my personal YouTube channel, and then I have a BookTube channel.
Do you have any paid YouTube business accounts? I have two, actually.
What do you mean paid?
You can, if you pay $5 a month, you get a business level account for
No, I don't do that. I'm a YouTube partner. I've been a YouTube partner since 2008, and so I do get a little bit of money for my YouTube.
I think it's better for your YouTube not to be on that business account. I've got my stuff is scattered, and I've got some of these interviews on Podcasters Home. Some are.
Yeah, I don't like all that, and pretty much everywhere I'm either, I'm Quotidian Light, I'm Maya Goode, or Literary Roadhouse. I just keep it really simple, keep it divided.
Is that the YouTube?
And that is my YouTube and my Twitter.
And Twitter, yeah, that's nice to brand. You can get too many different directions. So on YouTube.
Exactly. I've had Quotidian Light for 10 years. It was really hard for me to move to using my name, but I knew it was important for my book. But a lot of my stuff is still Quotidian Light.
I just put in that for a search on Google. You came up really good on the search.
Yeah. I said, I've been around for a really long time.
You did really well in the search. I like that picture there too.
I've been around for a very long time. My name comes up good. Quotidian Light comes up good. Literary Roadhouse comes up good. Now I just work on cleaning up the SEO so that when someone searches for a particular story or a particular book, then we'll come up good. That's my next goal.
Let's see. You've got 6,680 views on New Podcast and Literary Adventures. That's your featured piece up here with your artwork. Your artwork's gorgeous, by the way.
Thank you.
Put it up. Tell us the story behind the artwork.
I'm not sure which website you're looking at.
It's Literary Roadhouse. I'm looking at the YouTube channel. Let me drop this in here.
You're looking at the YouTube channel. One second, let me open that up. We actually had like I said, I'm in this self-publishing community peripherally because I spy on them. And also there's a wonderful designer who is in that community as well. Her name is Anita Solgad. She's I can't pronounce her last name, and she actually did all of our logos for the most part. She did the original Literary Roadhouse logo, which is the Literary Roadhouse with the feather, and she also did the Literary Roadhouse book club. So she took a look at one of our hosts, and she pretended like she was a Disney princess. And no, that's not her name. I'm
playing with it right now. I'm trying to find it.
She is an amazing graphic designer. She primarily does children's books. And then the other logo was done on Fiverr. And so when we needed a banner, I had my daughter take the 3 logos and do something to make them all work.
Yeah, it's nice. I know. I really like your literary, like
literature. The thing was, I think a lot of podcasters don't pay attention to branding very much, and so we actually were planning the podcast 2 months out before the first show, and we have custom music. Our music is not from anywhere. It's not something we bought. We actually had it made for our shows. All of our logos were made for us. I paid for a lot of them. And that's because I wanted it to be stuff that would last. I made sure everything was done in vector. So no matter what size we wanted, if eventually we want t-shirts or whatever, or huge posters or whatever, we can do that. It was really a matter of planning, even right down to the co-hosts. So a lot of podcasters, they will look around and they'll say, oh, I want to do a podcast. Let me grab my friends. I actually did a casting call to find my podcast co-host. because I didn't want it to be a show where everybody kind of is the same type of person. I wanted it to be really diverse, and I deliberately picked people that were different from everybody else in order to find the right mix.
Okay. My daughter just told me she's going on a walk, which is nice. She's 16. I've got a 16 and a 13-year-old.
Yeah.
Interesting. 2 girls. My wife is kind of interesting. Hey, I was just looking. This is a serious question. I'm looking at Blab. I think Blab has done really well lately with sound. The last few podcasts have come out really well with sound, and it varies. But I am concerned that they may not stay in business because I don't see the growth. Do you see the growth with them?
I do, but it's not the growth people want it to be.
What do they want? What do you think they want?
I think in order to grow, they're going to go, it's going to be less social and more utility. So people come to Blab in order to do something rather than coming to Blab to talk to each other. They're still going to be that, but I think a lot of people that are coming to Blab right now see a utility in Blab that they're willing to pay for. If Blab turned around and said, we want you to pay $10 a month, I would pay $10 a month.
I think so.
Hangouts to record my shows.
When it gets big enough, I think it would be good to make it easy to podcast. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's darn easy. And if they just need to improve a few different things, maybe at $10 give you a little bit more bandwidth or work on so they don't have dubbing, because when we talk, it dubs each other.
Yeah, I know. I hate that. And also the new feature of being able to show a link while they're talking. Mm-hmm. I can see news organizations paying a premium to have that, to have their news show and then be able to have listeners commenting and stuff. Like, I see a lot of use, but it's not the use that people are expecting. I don't think it's going to turn into a Twitter.
No, I think it'll be something. It won't be a YouTube either. That's for sure.
No, it's totally different.
I think it'll be utility, and they have to charge. I think people would pay money for this as it evolves.
I would.
I think it'd be if they could hook it into an RSS feed and make it so you get it on a smartphone, or keep it affordable, or a place to actually store. Like, do you use Libsyn by any chance to store your podcast?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, Libsyn's pretty good. If they could do that, put something in, because they're doing that for us for free. You realize what they're doing for free here?
Yeah, right now it's not even so. It's beta. It's only beta. We're just the testers. Yeah. I'm like, don't get it twisted. This is not what it's going to end up being.
No, but you could take that. You have a feed in there, so
yeah, exactly.
And I put that schedule up, which makes it really easy for the whole week. I do my links all week, and it's just interesting. Well, I think what we'll probably end up doing, we're getting close to dinner time. I know. Yeah. What are you going to do this afternoon? See your kids?
No, actually, my daughter is home on vacation, but she's hanging out with her friends, and my son and I kind of live like bachelors. So he's going to go to his room and play video games, and I'm going to sit downstairs and write.
Right. That's what we do. You get to writing. That's good. And I'll be editing while you do this. So it is 5:00 now. If I work real hard and get the show notes, I could probably have this done by 7 tonight.
Well, good luck. Thank you very much. It was fun talking to you.
And make sure you come back next year. Just, stay in contact.
Oh, I will.
And I'll get your email and we'll go back and forth. I'll put you on my spam list.
I'm going to be having, I'm going to be doing YouTube videos as I travel, showing my travels. And my BookTube channel is going to be full of videos about writing as I'm traveling and the process of getting published. And so, yeah, I'm going to be around. I'm not going anywhere.
That's good. That's good. I guess you could give us a class on YouTube, best uses of YouTube.
Oh, I've been on YouTube for a long time.
Maybe I should have you do something. That next course is coming up as a outside guest to come and say something about doing something. I'll give you the course. I'll let you review it.
Oh, I would love to take a look at it. Yeah, I've been on YouTube since 2006, 2007. I think I started my account 6 months after it had started.
Wow. That's amazing in itself.
Yeah, I've been on there a really long time.
So, and you did Blab early too, fairly early.
I'm like I said, I'm a geek. I am, I don't necessarily look like a geek, but I am totally a geek.
I saw, in closing, Blab doing podcasts, and I was already working in a way that a person could, instead of putting it up on Libsyn, could put it up on YouTube and get the effect, not the RSS feed for Apple, but get the effect and understand what they're doing. I saw Blab and I said immediately, this is probably a better way to create a podcast. And initially, I think the sound was better than they sort of degraded a little bit. Now it's come back.
The first time I saw it, I thought, what took so long? because it seems so obvious. Like, I don't know why nobody ever thought YouTube, Twitter, Smush with a sprinkle of Facebook on top. Like, why did no one think of it until now? Because in hindsight, it looks so obvious.
Yeah. And I can't stand now doing a podcast without actually seeing somebody's face.
Oh, I can't. I use Skype for my Spanish lessons. It adds to the communication. You know, the body language is really important for communication.
Well, we better lock off here. Mike might want to come. Mike, do you have anything admin for me or anything, questions? He's probably out eating there. It's late for him.
Hi, Mike. Hope you're having a good dinner.
Well, I'm gonna, you know what? Did I make you a host? Let me see something. I didn't make you a host. Make sure I make you a host.
Well, I'm out of here.
I just made you a host no, I meant to make you a host early. I don't like to make people early if they don't know how to use it, because they'll come on and if you turn it on and then turn it off, if as a host, they'll mess it up. But I like to make everyone a host as soon as they come on. I've seen some people I haven't seen up there coming in right now. Do you know any of these folks, Mr.
Nope, I don't. These are all your people. Well, let me know when it goes live, and I'll make sure that I put it on all of my feeds so everybody knows, and I'll add it to my website because I keep a list of all my interviews and stuff on my personal website.
It'll be live by 11 o'clock tonight on podcast on iTunes.
Okay. Thanks. Thank you very much. You have a good evening. I'm going to shut you down. All right. Bye.
Okay. I'm out of it. I'm like tired. But it was a really good interview. A lot of stuff going on. Anybody have any blab ideas before we finish up, or any input they want to put in? Working on another project. Oh, Mike. Yeah. See, Mike's working on another project. Hey, just some thoughts. That there's some good information on writing and on blab and the future blab. And, we want to see them survive, and we'll have to see. They have to monetize, and they have to continue to grow. So that must be a tough thing to do. I saw them with a whiteboard today, and during the whiteboard discussion, they turned it off. So I guess there's some high level stuff, but it's interesting watching a whiteboard. Well, with that, I'm looking at the open sheet here, and we will turn it off to the top blab. So take care. I'm out of here.